Hello, Lad Lane Leopards. We are on our way to the Elite Eight of our March Madness of books. In the first round, we had matchups of The Cat Who Walked Across France versus A Friend for Tiger. Then we had The Girl Who Loved Caterpillars versus I Have an Olive Tree. Next up, we had The Story of Ferdinand versus Temple Cat. And the last matchup on this half of the bracket was Silent Music versus Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. So our winner for our first matchup is The Cat Who Walked Across France. That book will face off against I Have an Olive Tree. Our next Elite Eight winner is The Story of Ferdinand. Ferdinand will be matched up against Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. This was a really close one. Sylvester and the Magic Pebble won in your voting just by a few votes. Let's take a look at our winners on this half of the bracket. First up, we had Pancakes for Supper versus Daisy Comes Home. Next up, we had Stregonona versus The Bicycle Man. Then we had Dragonfly's Tale versus Rain School. And finally, we had Adelita versus The Banza. Our winners on this side, Pancakes for Supper versus Daisy Comes Home, is Daisy Comes Home. Next up, we had Stregonona versus The Bicycle Man. This was also a very close vote, and the winner was The Bicycle Man. So our first Elite Eight matchup on this side of the bracket is Daisy Comes Home versus The Bicycle Man. Then we had Dragonfly's Tale versus Rain School, and the winner was Rain School. And finally, the bottom of the bracket, Adelita wins over The Banza. All right, our Elite Eight is set. So by next week, we will have our Final Four, and then finally our champion. So keep voting. So for our first matchup of the Elite Eight, we have A Cat Who Walked Across France versus I Have an Olive Tree. Enjoy! Hello, Lad Lane Leopards. Today I'm going to be reading The Cat Who Walked Across France by Kate Banks. For many years, the cat had lived in the stone house by the edge of the sea. He chased the wind that scuttled through the garden. He watched the birds flitter from tree to tree. At dusk, he curled up in the bend of the old woman's arm. The old woman would scratch the cat's ear and stroke his back. Good kitty, good kitty. Then one day, the old woman died. Her belongings, along with the cat, were shipped north to the house where she was born. But there was no one to scratch the cat's ear or stroke his back, and soon the cat was forgotten. He prowled the streets, begging for scraps to eat and fleeing from stray dogs, until one day he left. He roamed the countryside, circling pastures where animals grazed, and he watched his own shadow lengthen as each day drew to a close. At night, he sheltered himself in a lonely barn. He lay in a pile of stiff hay. But when he closed his eyes, he could feel the softness of the blue grass that grew behind the stone house by the edge of the sea. At daybreak, the cat would bathe himself in the first rays of the sun. Then he would trot off. Sometimes he strolled, other times he slunk. He learned to hunt field mice and birds and drink from the village fountains. Once someone set a bowl of milk under his nose, and he thought of staying. But then a voice cried, "Run along now." Big cities loomed large, bustling and brimming with noise, but the cat scampered bravely down the wide avenues, dodging cars and bicycles. Children playing ball would chase after him or cry, "Shoo, shoo," and the cat would scurry up a tree. But when he nestled in its branches, he would remember the tangy smell of lemons ripening on a branch under a window at the stone house by the edge of the sea, and he would move on. The cat pranced over bridges and bristled at the thundering trains that passed. At dusk, he would lick the dirt from his face and paws. In his dreams, he could hear the twigs snapping and the crunch of dried leaves as he circled around the stone house by the edge of the sea. Weeks passed, then months. The cat measured time against the weathered soles of his feet. His fur grew scruffy. Now and again he would stop to linger on a grassy bank or in a cool shade of an ancient wall. Or he would pause to watch a barge gliding down a canal. When it rained, the cat took refuge under a friendly rafter. He was lonely and tired, but when the storm passed, he would march on, driven by the taste of the salty air that blew off the water and coated the bench behind the stone house by the edge of the sea. When the cat came to a river, he would stop for a drink. He would watch the fish jump in wide arcs over the water, and he would cry, meow. Then he would stretch his legs, arch his back, and continue on his way. Sometimes he stopped to romp in the fields. He rolled in the tall grass and skipped over buttercups. But when he came to the fields of lavender, a memory stirred, and the cat saw the blue door of the stone house by the edge of the sea, and the soft light in the hallway that seemed to say, "Come right in." The cat was thin and frail when he wandered into the port. The boats with their flapping sails told him he was nearby. At last, he walked up to the gate of the stone house by the edge of the sea. The front door was wide open. The cat walked in. He settled into a warm spot and fell asleep. He awoke to the sound of voices. Where did it come from? Do you suppose it's lost? A boy and a girl were standing over him, talking. A platter of food was set on the floor, and a bowl of fresh water. The cat shied away. "Here, kitty," said a soft voice. A hand reached under the cat's chin and scratched. The cat began to purr. He closed his eyes. He was reminded of the hands of the old woman stroking his back. He could hear her quiet breathing and gentle words, "Good kitty," and he knew he was home. The end.
I Have an Olive Tree by Eve Bunting, illustrated by Karen Barber. The day I was 7, my grandfather gave me an olive tree. "Happy birthday, Sophia," he said. "Where's the tree?" my brother Georgios asked. "It's in Greece, on the island," my grandfather said. We all know about Greece and the island where my grandparents lived before they came to California, the island where my mother was born. "When we left the island, we sold everything," my grandfather explained. "But the new owners let us keep the tree. It was a symbol." "What does that mean?" Georgios asked. "The olive tree was something of ours that was rooted in Greek earth," grandfather said. "It is in the field behind the house that was ours. Now, Sophia, I give it to you." Grandfather kissed me and I smiled, but I didn't really understand. "Your grandmother used to climb into the tree and pick olives and let them fall into a net below," grandfather said. "She was a wonderful picker." Mama gave him a hug. "She had to be. She picked you." Grandfather nodded. He took grandmother's string of beads from his pocket and let them trickle through his fingers. Grandfather carried them always since the time she had died. "Thank you for the tree, grandfather," I said. "Sophia really wanted a skateboard," Georgios told him. "Be quiet, Georgios," Papa warned. I wanted a skateboard, and I didn't want an olive tree. What would I do with it? My grandfather died a year after he gave me the tree. We were all with him around his bed. Mama had brought him grandmother's beads to hold, and he crumpled them up and gave them to me. At first, I thought he wanted me to have them for a keepsake. But he said, "Sophia, will you go to the island and hang these in your olive tree for grandmother and me? I've asked your mother if she will take you, and she has agreed." I was all puddled up and sniffly. I nodded, but I wasn't sure how Mama and I could do this. Later, Mama told me how grandfather had been saving and saving. "The money is so we can go to Greece, Sophia," she said. Mama and I took a plane to Athens and then a cab to the docks. Everything looked different. It was strange to think we had come so far from home. Mama got quieter and quieter. Sometimes she read aloud the names written in Greek above the shops as if she liked the sound of them in her mouth. The woman who sold tickets to the ferry spoke some English. "There's only one boat a day," she told us. "It is just a small island." "I know," Mama said. The woman eyed Mama's suitcase and my backpack. "You will be staying at the house and board of Alexandra Gramos?" "Yes," Mama said, "for 2 nights only. It has been arranged." We sat on a wooden bench to wait. People bustled around us and talked in Greek. Some of them carried baskets almost as big as themselves. Ferry boats came and left. Never ours. A sponge seller, his sponges stacked around him like great lumps of honeycomb, called out his prices. I wanted to get one for me and one for Georgios, but Mama said no, maybe on the way back. Mama shook me awake when the ferry came. As soon as I opened my eyes, I thought, I'm in Greece, but it didn't seem real. There was a priest on the ferry with us. He had on a long black robe, and his hair was pinned up in a bun under his hat. There was also a woman with a flock of sheep. They baaed and bleated, and to me they seemed to be speaking American sheep talk, not Greek. The woman let me pet them. "There is good grazing on the island," Mama said. But even as she spoke, she leaned across the side of the boat, not looking at me or the priest or the sheep woman or the sheep. I held on to the back of her jacket. She seemed to be reaching across the sea. It was as if she was ready to fly. "There it is," she whispered. Her fingers shook as she pointed, and I saw a misty hump sticking out of the water. The priest smiled and said something in Greek, and after a minute, Mama smiled at him and nodded. "What did he say?" "I think he asked if we were going home." "But we're not," I said. Before we got to the dock, we could hear music, like a guitar, and as we edged into the mooring, we saw a man with a droopy mustache sitting on a box. "That's a bouzouki he's playing," Mama said. The priest waved us ahead of him, and then we all had to jump in quickly to the side as the sheep came stampeding down the little gangplank. "We'll go to the olive tree first," Mama said. "But we'll have to carry the suitcase and my backpack." The backpack had been getting heavier and heavier ever since we left home. "The tree's not far," Mama said. "Nothing is far on the island." We walked past houses, whitewashed, sleeping in the sun. Sometimes my mother stopped and put the suitcase down, and I thought she was resting, but I could see she was looking at the things and probably remembering. A woman carrying a bucket came out of a house. She called out to us in Greek. "What did she say?" I asked. "It sounded like, 'Have a nice day,'" Mama smiled. The road narrowed. Rock, roses climbed the hedges. "Look at the sky," Mama said. "It's blue light." I was feeling something strange. My chest hurt. I began to cry. "It's all right," Mama drew in a shaky, nosy breath. "There's the house we lived in, Sophia. There's the field." We walked across the field, the suitcase between us bumping our legs, the straps of the backpack cutting into my neck. 2 goats cropped the grass. A bigger one drank from a rusty bathtub. Another looked as if it might run at us, and I got behind Mama, but the goat didn't move. "There's your tree," Mama said. It was not the way I had imagined. We stood beneath it. "No olives," Mama said. "I expect it's too old." I put my hand on the trunk. It was dry and rough and knotted. Mama gave me a tissue so I could wipe my eyes and blow my nose. "Should I get the beads now?" I asked. She nodded. My fingers were fumbly as I unbuckled the backpack and took out the beads and let them stream into my hand. "They're like liquid gold," Mama said. "Look how the sun traps itself in them." "They're like big bubbles of honey," I said. I gave them to Mama. "I can't reach." "Grandfather wanted you to do it." She lifted me, and I hung the beads high on a branch. I watched the beads glitter in the sunlight, and then I pulled the tree's leaves around to hide them. Grandfather would be pleased, I thought, and I knew that this wasn't the only reason Grandfather had wanted us to come. It had to do with Mama and me and all of us being a part of the island. He wanted Mama to remember again, and he wanted me to know. I did know. I'd never forget the island. Someday I'd come back. I tugged at Mama's hand. I have an olive tree, I said. The end.
All right, Lad Lane Leopards, don't forget to vote and see who makes it to the Final Four.